How do you learn who you really are? It's not found in books. It's found on the battlefield.
You're talking to and hanging out with tonight. I am based out of Provo, Utah. I have 6 kids. We just had our 6th. That's 5 girls and 1 little boy. My wife and I have been married for coming up on 12 years right now. A lot of you are going to assume, because I'm in Utah and because I have that many kids, that I am Mormon, which, yes, I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I only have 1 wife, so we don't do that other stuff anymore. But yeah, so I'm out here in Utah, and I have been self-employed now for coming up on 6 years, and I mostly work with men, although for you women who are on the call tonight, there's still a lot of value that you'll be able to get out of this. And I approach confidence, congruence, authenticity, a lot of this in a very different way than most of the guys who are in this self-development space, because the way that I approach it is from a style and an aesthetic perspective. I work with clients to help them manifest and create an identity based on how they look, as opposed to just focusing on the inner stuff. And I think one of the things that's really interesting about the way that I do this is, unlike the guys who are focused entirely on fitness or relationships or finances, that it can be really easy to feel like all you got to do is like get really good at game and then everything else is really easy, or all you got to do is get your fitness totally dialed and everything else is really easy. I'm under no delusions that style is like the top of the hierarchy when it comes to self-development. Secondary, probably even more likely to be tertiary, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't have any relevance. And what you guys will find, hopefully, as we go through the conversation tonight, is that this is actually a much more deep and psychological issue, even a philosophical issue, than the vast majority of people ever give it any credit for. So what I've found as I've done trainings with my own coaching and with groups in the past is that this can really be kind of difficult to do if we just do it where I present something to you guys. And so for the most part, what we're going to do is we're actually going to interact. And so I think the best way to do it until we open it up for Q&A is to just do it in the chat. And so just to kind of warm things up a little bit, and just so I have a good idea of what things are, will you guys just put a 1 in the chat if you've heard of me before, and a 2 if you've never heard of me before? Okay, 2, 2, 1, 2. Sweet. So I get a bunch of newbies. Oh, sweet. That's a lot of 2s. Okay. And a few good ones in there. Awesome. Okay. Next thing I would like to know is, just tell me where you guys are based out of. I want to know mostly, like, am I working with people in the United States? How much is their international? Because even then, like, the cultural differences between where you are, even in different states or different cities, can give me a good idea. So, well, yeah, whatever detail you're comfortable giving me, a state, a city, a country, anything else like that. Cool. Awesome. Okay. All right. I want to start off with a question for just the men. How many of you guys, again, put a 1 in there if this is a yes, and 2 if it's a no. How many of you guys, as soon as you heard that what I do is I teach guys about confidence through style, had an internal eye roll and went, oh, great, this is not the hour that I expected it to be? Oh, good. Okay, good. I get a lot of resistance to this sometimes because a lot of times, in fact, one of the memes that I have as I'm active on social media is the quote that real men don't care how they look. If you guys ever heard that idea before, or especially you guys who are like older than your mid-30s, you were gay if you cared about your clothes, or you were effeminate, or somehow it was less than manly to care about your appearance, right? Anybody who's like elder millennial on up, that was kind of the culture that we grew up in. And it's really interesting to start to pick that apart. And so I'm glad that there's not as much resistance. And for you guys that there is a little bit of resistance, I'm excited to kind of get to break your paradigms a little bit with you. Okay, so I want to start by breaking down some preconceptions here. Most of the time when people hear what I do, they think that I'm a stylist, or a lot of the comparisons I get is like Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, like the Netflix show or anything else like that, where it's like my whole job is to take sloppy, dumpy, whatever dudes, whatever negative word you could throw at it, and then my job is to make them fabulous and make them fashionable and make them look like GQ models or whatever else. And that is absolutely not what I do. In fact, if I did do that, it would absolutely be detrimental to what my main goal is, because what I've found as I've worked with men over the last decade in doing this stuff is that who we are on the outside and who we are on the inside has to align. That they have to be perceived as the same person, or otherwise when you're looking at yourself in the mirror, on social media, when you see yourself on a screen on the Zoom call right now, what you end up seeing is a fraud and a fake. And that becomes part of your self-talk, is that I'm a fraud or I'm a fake, or the person that I present myself to be to the rest of the world is different than how I actually see myself, or the person that I present myself to the rest of the world is different than what my family sees, or my children, or my spouse, or what anybody else sees. And this is obviously going to be the same for you ladies as it is for the men. This congruence of who we are on the outside and who we are on the inside, that needs to align in order us to develop the full sense of confidence, congruence, authenticity, all of things that we're after when it comes to our self-development. All right, next question I would like to know. How many of you guys, again, this is another one specifically for the men. I'll ask you women one in a second, but for the men, how many of you guys have either, how do I want to put this? Thought about hiring somebody that would be a stylist, like to pick out your clothing, or had a wife or a girlfriend or somebody else pick out clothing for you? Put a 1 in there if you've had that happen before. Okay. John, yes. Rick, yes. Druss, yes. Ryan. Okay. John, can I pick on you? Do you mind if I have you unmute and I want to ask you about this a little bit? Are you cool with that? Since you were the first one who answered.
Johns. We got Johnny.
Oh, John Fox was my first one. Sorry. John Fox, since he was the first one who answered.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay. Awesome. All right. So tell me, what was your experience? Was it a spouse? Was it a girlfriend? Was it a stylist? Like, what happened for you with this?
I was always a spouse. I was lazy. I didn't pick out my own shit. They'd be going to get stuff and they just grab something for me. So
okay. And how did you feel about the stuff that was picked for you?
It didn't bother me.
It didn't bother you?
I didn't have a lot of care in it either.
Okay. So it's just kind of a good neutral.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me ask you, how much of that was a neutrality because at the time your identity was relatively neutral? And how much of it was a neutrality because the person that was picking it out for you actually had a good understanding of who you were and how that could have been expressed through your clothing?
No, I think I just didn't care. It was that neutrality in representing myself as any specific thing.
Okay. Yeah. So it's okay. That's really good. I appreciate that you brought that up. Okay. That's another one that I would like to ask. And this is one that's appropriate for everybody, is how often when it comes to your clothing, what I've found is that a lot of times we get caught in this kind of false binary. Okay. And especially for men, and even for you ladies, I'm curious to know how much this is the case for you. It seems like we have one of two options. It's, I can dress not so poorly that I draw negative attention to myself, but just well enough that I don't really draw any attention to myself. And John, that sounds kind of like where you were, right? Where it's like, I don't want the expectations and the pressure and the thought and the performance and everything else. It's like, I want to just dress well enough to be a gray man and be totally neutral. Is that a pretty good read on where you were?
Absolutely.
Right. Okay. And then the alternative to that is I have to dress in a way that's incredibly garish, ostentatious, attention-seeking. And because I don't want to do that, I'm going to stay here where I am. Am I correct on that assumption as well?
And I'm going to say yes, but this is from a past perspective. I have since started dressing myself, but
I love it. But yeah, where you were then, that was kind of the assumption, is it's either I want to avoid all the pressure. I'm going to be comfortable. And most guys, when they say they want to dress comfortably, they trick themselves into thinking that they want to be physically comfortable. But what they're really saying is, I want to be psychologically comfortable. I want to feel safe. I want to feel like myself. And I don't want anybody else to have any false expectations of me that I then either have to live up to, and I'm pissed about the fact that I have to live up to it, or I fail to live up to those expectations, and I'm pissed about the fact that I failed to live up to those expectations. And so for most guys, it is the comfort of psychological comfort that we're after when we dress the way that we do when it's that way, or going to the other side. Okay. Have any of you guys felt like those were kind of your only two options? And again, this one's for the men and women. Give me a 1 if that's the yes, or a 2 if that's a no, if you haven't felt trapped between those two. Well, a lot of 2s. Good. Okay. Some twos, some ones, some twos. Okay, awesome. Well, what I want to teach you guys today is that there are 3 different variables that go into creating a sense of style and aesthetic that creates that external internal congruence that we're after. Okay. And the trick to all of this is that you need to find out what the ratio is for all 3 of those for yourself. Okay. Now, the first one is the easiest one to focus on, and this is just the simple rules of aesthetics. Okay. These are things like what colors look good on you? How do things fit according to what your build is? What are good proportions? This is something that for a lot of us, we tend to miss out on this one. But then as soon as we start to improve our appearance, we think that this is the only thing that matters. We think that as long as I can get clothes that fit, or I get the colors that are the right palette or anything else like that, then it becomes really easy and really simple to focus on. And aesthetics absolutely do matter. But the reality is aesthetics only make up about 10% of what a good sense of style is. Okay. The second thing that we're going to focus on, we're going to use 3 A's. Okay. The second thing, we're going to call this attachment. All right. And this is what clothing does to help us fit in and belong to whatever tribe it is that we're a part of. And fitting in can mean a bunch of different things. It can be, I'm really cool and I'm at the top of the hierarchy and I fit in and I'm following the trends, which is what a lot of guys do. Or it can be this, I just want to avoid any negative expectations or any negative connotations. And I just kind of want to blend in. And it's anything that's in there in between. There's this level of attachment. Attachment can also go the other direction, which is dressing in a way that is, I don't want that group to think that I am part of them in any way, shape, or form whatsoever. And so I'm going to dress in a way that repels those people. And so attachment is not only belonging to the right group, but it's also repelling the wrong group. And there's a big element that comes with that. Okay, here's another question for the guys. How many of you guys, when you wear shorts in the summertime, have shorts that go down past your knees? One for that. Rick's moved on. Okay, some good ones, couple twos. All right. Let's see. I want to ask Chris Miller. Are you good if I put you in the hot seat and ask you about why you wear longer shorts?
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Okay, tell me about it. Why do you still wear longer shorts?
Mostly because the few times that I do typically wear shorts, I find myself like crawling around doing stuff, and it just keeps me from scraping up my knees quite so much. Like if I'm, working on a car or something like that. That's
Cool.
really about the biggest reason. Like I said, I typically, even in the summertime, I just don't wear shorts that often.
So are you only wearing shorts when you're actually getting down and doing physical labor?
For the most part, yeah, if I'm wearing shorts, that's typically it. Unless I'm, like at a pool or something like that, but
How long are your swim trunks?
about knee height or so, maybe just a hair above.
Okay, good. So you're getting beyond that. Do you mind if I ask how old you are?
34.
Okay, yeah. So you're right in that same demographic. I'm 38. Do you remember how long shorts were when you were in elementary school and junior high and high school?
Man, I had shorts that were long enough that they would be considered capris.
Right? Do you know why that is? Do you guys know why in like the 90s everybody wore long shorts? It was Michael Jordan that did that. Because when he first started playing for the Bulls, he still wanted to wear his North Carolina, the college that he went to. He still wanted to wear his shorts when he was playing in his games because he thought that they were lucky shorts, but he needed to be able to have, like, he couldn't actually play and have those shorts be visible. And so he wore longer, baggier shorts as a way to cover up what those North Carolina shorts were. And then because Michael Jordan was the style icon, or was the cultural icon that he was, it created an entire style and an entire aesthetic. And then that trickles down to the point where in elementary schools, little kids are getting picked on and beaten up because their shorts are too short and they look like their grandpa, or they look like a dork, or they get made fun of for anything else. This is this whole idea of attachment. So many of us guys will form an attachment or a sense of style about ourselves based on the way that we were treated in things like junior high and high school, and mostly about where we fell into the pecking order as far as how people treated us based on our clothing. This is the same thing that happens a lot when it comes to like belonging to different groups in high schools, where I was really involved in punk rock and BMX bikes. And not only did I want to make sure that I did not look like the jocks or the preps or anybody else, but even to the point where I didn't want people to confuse me for a skater or for one of the goths, because even these micro tribes and the attachment and everything that came with that mattered. And so what you will find is that, and I want you guys to do this experiment this week. Go on social media, especially something like Facebook, where you're actually connected to like old friends, and pay attention to how many of the men that you're friends with still dress like they did when you graduated from high school, or the way that they did when they were first into college, especially right before they got married. That style is formed in this idea of attachment. It's based on how we relate to different people and what our identity is in relationship to other people. But then the third aspect of really good style is this aspect of authenticity, and it becomes a sense of self. My experience over the last 10 years has taught me that men care infinitely more about their clothing than women do when it comes to being incredibly stubborn and sticklers about not changing the way that they look. And that's because, for the most part, for men and women, the ratio is a little bit different. I would say for both, aesthetics is anywhere from like 10 to 15%. For women, attachment is going to be somewhere like 60 to 70%. And then authenticity is going to be the remaining difference. Whereas for men, especially men that have now graduated from, they're in a career, you're in a relationship, you're stable to some extent, you're going to go from that same like 10 to 15% aesthetics. And then it's only going to be about 20% attachment, but the vast majority of it is going to be a sense of self. And so for a lot of us men, the way that we dress has become an emotional security blanket. And the reason why it's so hard to change our style, the reason why it's so hard to change our appearance, is because our identity, our authenticity is rooted in that appearance. But the problem is that appearance isn't something that was created by the man that exists today. That appearance is something that was created by the man that existed however many years ago. And if you're actually doing the self-development that you say that you're doing, that you're paying Rick to help you do, that you're in this call because you're interested in doing self-development, you're not being authentic to who you are right now. You're being authentic to an old, dead, abandoned version of yourself by continuing to dress the way that you do. And so mentally, what you're doing is you're actually holding yourself back from being able to both believe the progress that you've made, but then also capitalize on the momentum that you've built and continuing to build that momentum and move it forward. And that's not exclusive to just the men. That same thing can happen for the women as well. And so your changing style has very little to do with what GQ or Cosmopolitan or whatever the latest Instagram influencer or YouTube channel says is the thing that's in trend right now. Your style should change and grow and evolve because it's based on the fact that you are growing and changing and evolving. And just like we need positive self-talk, that reinforcement, that belief system that comes from being able to recognize that I am capable of growth, I've made progress, I am better than I used to be, we need positive self-sight. We can get that same level of reinforcement by being able to see that progress in the mirror or on social media or on our Zoom calls. This is why fitness transformations are such a big deal, and why so often they can actually stick, or why they can be so crucial. And like, you don't just get good, like you don't just get a better physique and it stops there. You get a better physique and all of a sudden you're more interested in improving your relationships, or you get better in business or anything else. It's not like a six-pack just has this magical power to all of a sudden make the rest of your life better. The power of it is that every morning when you see yourself in the mirror, you don't see the guy that was lazy and slacking and didn't get to where he wanted to be. What you see is the guy who made a positive change in his life, and that becomes a reinforcing mechanism of what your own self-perception is. That's where that authenticity comes from. And what's so cool about this stuff is that it doesn't have to stop with just your physique. You can change that self-perception. You can get that positive self-sight with your grooming, with your clothing, with everything else related to your appearance. Okay, there's a question in here from Phil. Phil, I'm going to have you unmute, and I want to talk through this with you a little bit, because you're asking about what if you were a chameleon and floated between groups.
Yeah, no, that's what I did all the time. I floated between different groups all the time because I didn't want to go home, rough home life. So I would do things like go clean somebody's living room. Their mom would love me. Here's dinner. Everybody's happy.
Gotcha. How did you dress?
However, the family dress kind of just mirrored it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So based on who it was that so you were that acute and that fine-tuned in what your appearance was, that based on the family you were around or the groups that you hung around, you were actually being a chameleon and adapting to that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. how strong, especially before coming in and joining this group, how strong was your sense of self?
I mean, genuinely, it was actually a lot of masks, a lot of stuff that I had to let go and work through. But I've been through a lot of tough things, so it was really strong, but not vetted deeply, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. Yeah, where there's a fixed idea, but it's not embedded deep enough to actually take hold.
Yeah, I had to
Yeah.
break through stuff, put down a lot of baggage, still working on pieces. You know how it is, keep growing.
Absolutely. Do you feel like seeing a different person in the mirror every day, or seeing a different person depending on the houses that you went to, help deepen those roots? Or do you think that's part of what helped keep them more shallow, because you're always putting on a different face around different people?
Kept them more shallow, distant, like camo, basically.
Right?
like-
It was more to hide than
Yeah.
necessarily to fit in or to express who you actually were, right?
No, it's just sit there. Yeah, just get the benefits, camo in, everybody's happy, and out I go. Just
Do you still dress that way?
no. Now I just cut out anybody that I have to do that for.
Awesome. So now you get to actually reinforce to yourself that who you are is somebody that's consistent this way and can grow and can develop that way, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Easy.
Yeah. Well, and what's really cool about this is that this is where, when you start to get the combination of all three of these things in, that you can develop a sense of style that's actually going to be something that becomes what you want it to be, and actually reinforces those things. Because you can't just go all crazy in one direction or another. Let's say that we were to focus on aesthetics and authenticity, but we were to abandon attachment. Okay, I'm going to ask you guys a question for this. If you could pick any other culture at any other point in history, samurai, Vikings, Roman soldiers or gladiators, togas, Aztec jaguar warriors, whatever it would be, if you could pick that just purely based on the clothing, like what's the coolest style for you? Tell me in the chat what you would pick. Like, what would be the ideal style? All right, so we got a Viking. And ladies, I'm curious about this one for you too. Greek goddess, nice. Geisha, Spartan, Romans, Viking again. Yeah, Genghis Khan with the okay, like when he was wearing field mice pelts, or like actually after he was rich and they were wearing like gold robes and stuff like that, because there's very different levels of Genghis Khan. Gladiator, cowboy, yes, gold robes. Okay, notice that nobody is saying cargo shorts and graphic t-shirts. Like, that's not really aspirational for anybody. I don't think there are going to be very many people who look back at the year 2023 and like, I would love to embody that aesthetic, right? Like, that's just not really inspirational for anybody. Okay, so then the question, yeah, nobody going with Fred Durst, the flex red hat and all of that. That's like such a good early 2000s reference. Beautiful. Why don't you guys dress like that? I mean, really, if everything that you picked was incredibly good from an aesthetic perspective, that's part of the reason why we love these styles, is because the aesthetic is really good. And if it really resonates with you on a personal level, why don't you dress like that? And again, that's one, I mean, that can sound like a rhetorical question, but take a second to think about it. You can type it out in the chat. Like, why don't you dress like that today? Yeah. Can't just run around with a shield and a sword. Okay. Is it really just that it's too cold, Amy? There's more to it than that, right? Leather is expensive. It's not socially acceptable, right? Okay. I think really what it comes down to for most of us is that idea of it's not socially acceptable. Okay. So I want you guys, especially when it comes to this concept of attachment, and especially gauging how we dress, because you guys, this is what's so hard, is on a psychological level. If we tip the balance too far in dressing in order to please other people, or dressing in a way that makes us, it camouflages us, right? Like Phil was saying, like it just helps us blend in too much with other people. Then what we end up sacrificing on the altar is our sense of selves, right? But at the same time, if we dress exactly the way that we want to, and everybody else's opinion be damned, then we end up sacrificing our own ability to attach to people, whether that's dating or connecting with friends or family. That's certainly going to hurt you from a job aspect. And so a lot of it is really being able to find the right balance of what these two are, these seemingly conflicting things. And so I'm going to teach you guys to think about this in a very specific way. How many of you guys have heard of the Overton window from a philosophical perspective? I would imagine in a group like this, that's a fairly familiar term. If not, I'll explain it to you real quick. The Overton window is essentially a way to be able to talk about what is appropriate within a certain political or philosophical level of discussion. So you could say that 200 years ago, it was well within the Overton window to talk about how colonialism is God's way of bringing Christianity to the savage and uncivilized nations, right? That's very far outside our Overton window today. Nobody's talking about the benefits of colonialism and how it helps spread Christianity. The same thing, whereas today, what's right smack dab in the middle of it, and you have your opinions about this, I have my opinions about this, but what's right smack dab, or at least like making its way into the center of the Overton window today, is how many genders actually exist. And that wasn't in the Overton window 20 years ago, let alone 200 years ago, right? And so as society changes, I'm not even going to say evolves because it's not always an evolution, it's not always growth, but as society changes, that Overton window shifts. And sometimes it goes this way, and sometimes it goes that way. And the same thing happens with our aesthetic window. 300 years ago, if I dressed like George Washington and I was a general in the Revolutionary Army, I was right smack dab in the middle of the Overton window. But if I wore a toga or samurai armor, then I was outside that aesthetic window within George Washington's time, right? And so it's not just limited to time, but it's also limited to culture and space. Guys who work in okay, I have a client who runs a roofing business in Wisconsin, and his aesthetic window is very different than another client who's an attorney in Las Vegas, right? They live in the same time, they have a lot of the same goals, but their aesthetic windows are very different just because of the spaces that they inhabit, the people that they're around, and things like that. And so one of the biggest things that you can do when it comes to understanding who the tribes are that you interact with, who are the people that this attachment matters, work, family, stuff like that, is one, to think about how big that aesthetic window is. For a lot of us now, it's not the way that it used to be, where even for attorneys, it was always just like a shirt and a tie and a suit, like that was it. And now even for attorneys, it's changed. For most of us who work blue collar jobs, white collar tech jobs, especially post COVID, where it's remote jobs, that aesthetic window is actually pretty broad, where it's like, as long as your nuts aren't hanging out, which even some guys don't get fired for that on Zoom anymore, right? As long as that's not hanging out, and as long as you don't show up in like a, I don't know, like a Jack Sparrow pirate costume, then basically like you've got a lot of room to be able to wiggle with and play around in there. And so part of this idea of attachment is being able to find and focus on, one, how big the window is, and then two, where it is that you want to fall within it. Because just because we know where the window is doesn't mean that I always want to fall right within the middle of that window, right? Because if I belong to a particular group, but I actually don't like belonging to that particular group, or my identity isn't totally rooted in the fact that I belong to that group, I may want to move one or two standard deviations, or maybe all the way over to the edge of that window. Or maybe I'm in that group and my status within that group is relatively high. I run the business, or I'm the best at the sport, or whatever else. Then as a way to help solidify or communicate some of that status, I can move the Overton window, just like Michael Jordan did. He moved the aesthetic window from short knee-high shorts to baggy full-length shorts as a way to help solidify his own status and make him even more of a force to be reckoned with. Because when players would play against him, they weren't just playing against Michael Jordan as the ball player, they were playing against Michael Jordan as the cultural icon. And psychologically, that had a massive impact on them. And so you can think about how where you fit within that window works. And Rick, yes, that is exactly how trend setting works, is you get people who are high status within a given community, and they dress in a way that is designed very specifically to exclude the people that are low status. And then as that becomes more and more mainstream, then eventually what happens is it's lost its status signal. And so those that are high status move on to something else again in order to be able to reaffirm what that hierarchy is. And the process rolls over and starts all over again. And so even knowing where you fall within a given hierarchy, especially in something like work, where those hierarchies are usually relatively more fixed and rigid, you may not want to dress like the guys who are top of the line, because you may only be middle. And all you need to do is dress just a little bit better or a little bit more like them than where you are. Because if you go too much, then everybody's going to know that you're faking it, because it doesn't align with actually where you fit. Okay. And so know where your window is, and then know where you want to be within that window. And that's how you can get the attachment to actually start to work for you. And that's also where you start to bring in that authenticity element as well. Okay, so just as like a quick recap before we just open this up for a peer Q&A, because as I've done this over the years, I found that most of the time it's just more beneficial for you guys if I answer questions. And that may be something as simple as like, where do I buy t-shirts that fit? Or I work in this field and I'm dealing with this issue with like my team. How can my clothing help me tackle that particular, like we can go as just simple or as philosophical as you guys want. But just to recap, those 3 things that you want to be able to focus on and figure out for yourselves, because they are unique to you. They're not the same for the person that works in the cubicle or in the field next to you. They're not going to be the same for your spouse or for your kids or anything else. They are very specific to you. Aesthetics, attachment, and authenticity. And you get the right ratio of those 3 in. And then that's when what you see in the mirror every day is somebody who is capable of and already making the progress towards becoming the best version of themselves. And that becomes the story that you start to tell yourself. So let's do this. I'm going to have you guys go ahead and just type up any questions that you have in the chat, and we'll just kind of take them one by one. And when it's your turn, I'll have you unmute and we'll go from there. And hopefully I can actually help you guys with some practical stuff to this. Does that sound good to everybody? Give me a thumbs up if that works for you guys. Yeah. Okay, perfect. All right. Okay. All right, T.O., let's start with you. Are you wanting to argue this point with me? Because I would love to. This is a really good one.
Not so much argue. It's just
let's argue, dude. Come on.
It's just that kind of growing up, that's what I was told. And it didn't make any sense to me that the clothes don't make the person, and I never knew what exactly it meant. Versus just being wearing either Abercrombie or Hot Topic or, shit like that. It's like then you get yourself in, a group. But, my Mimi, I call her my Mimi. She kind of saved me from, keeping stories short, but from a bad situation. And she put me in a better one. And she would buy me Abercrombie clothes to try to fit into high school.
Right.
So, I wasn't either or, but then I liked their clothes because they were comfortable. And also I've never had nice clothes like that. So,
right.
It was a different thing because I felt neither or near. I listened to like the punk rock shit, heavy metal shit.
Yeah.
Wearing preppy clothes. It just didn't.
Yes.
It wasn't like matching up for me.
Right.
So,
and so there's that dissonance between the self-identity and then what's being presented, or the group that you identify with and the group that you're portraying to identify with. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's how it was for me. I went to a private school then, so I had to wear like a navy blazer and a rep stripe tie and gray slacks. And I wanted like green Liberty spikes and a battle jacket with all my favorite band patches on it. And so I get that dissonance for sure. I actually agree with this idea that clothes don't make the man. And I think this is one of the biggest problems when it comes to stylists or relying on wives or girlfriends. And I actually think this is a problem that a lot of women run into, is that if you start with, I will find a group that I belong to or an aesthetic that I like or something else that makes me feel good, and then I will create my identity around that, that becomes a massive problem. And that's what most of us do in junior high and high school, because you don't really have a sense of identity and you're just desperate to fit in, right? Whereas really, really good style goes the opposite direction. You start with a strong sense of who you are, where you fit in with the world, what your ambitions are, honestly, even what your weaknesses are and what it is that you're working on. And then you cultivate a sense of style that can help reflect and create that. And so it's not that it creates who you are, but it shows and reflects that on who you are. And you can even think about it from the perspective of, let's say, progressive overload from strength training. Do you lift at all?
Yeah. Sometimes.
Okay. So are you familiar with progressive overload? Like you add 5 pounds every time you go in, or add one more rep every time you go in, rather than my deadlift max is 450 and tomorrow I want to try and pull 500. That's not going to work. Like I got to incrementally work up there. And so like,
right,
maybe you wear the same clothes that you have before, but you buy a version that's a little bit nicer, not even more expensive, but just a little bit better made or fits a little bit better. And then your self-perception starts to change a little bit of like, oh, I deserve something that fits a little bit better. And I don't just have to like fit in and blend in and hide or anything else like that. And so you can get this back and forth between the clothes helping form the identity and then the identity helping determine what the clothing are. But the root of it should always be the identity. And so you were taught right, clothes don't make the man. And anybody who says otherwise is getting the whole system backwards. Yeah. So does that help?
Yeah, and it pretty much clears it up. I mean,
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to move on to Chris Miller. All right, big general concept here. Even if you care about your appearance, socially, it still matters on days you don't go anywhere and just stay home. Yes. Okay, let me tell you why this one matters. And Chris, I'll still have you on mute so that we can talk through this. The biggest reason for this is because, one, you shouldn't be dressing only because of how it communicates things to other people. You should be dressing mostly because of what it communicates to yourself. And so are you the kind of person that is so desperate to just be ratty and dirty and stinky that like you can't wait for the chance to do that? Or are you the kind of person that has enough self-respect that even when you're on your own, you dress well? And I don't want you to conflate dressing well with dressing formally. There are still plenty of days. Like I said, guys, I've got 6 kids under the age of 10. There's still plenty of days when I'm in sweatpants and sneakers and a hoodie, but they fit well. And they don't have a ton of logos that my identity is now rooted in the fact that I consume this product or that I listen to this band. And they're high quality and things like that. And so you can have the entire spectrum of formality to be able to play with. But yes, you should still always dress in a way that is stylish, that is aesthetically pleasing, that is intentional, because that means that it's actually done for you and for your own internal and your own self-perception, as opposed to it being a mask that you put on for everybody else. And it's only being done for the benefit of other people. Does that help reframe that at all for you, Chris?
Yeah, I think my biggest thing about that is, currently I'm working from home and have been for a while. So, I'll wake up in the morning and, I would just throw on sweatpants and a t-shirt unless it's a little chilly, and then I'll throw on a hoodie as well. But, it's not just, random stuff. I mean, it's just, the standard black hoodie and pair of sweats. I mean, it pretty much just goes with anything. So it's not like it's just, completely disorganized or anything like that. But at the same time, it's, sweatpants and a hoodie for most of the time that I'm doing anything. And then if I do go in town, I just throw on a pair of jeans and typically wear the same hoodie anyway, because, even on days I do go anywhere that during the winter, that's typical attire, jeans and a hoodie.
Yeah.
And, Rick can probably attest to this as well, that, whenever it's summertime, there's not even a hoodie, and 9 times out of 10, there's no sleeves either.
Yeah. Okay, one thing that I think will actually help you when it comes to this is what a lot of my stay-at-home guys struggle with. Do you remember Mr. Rogers? Do you remember watching that show as a kid?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember the whole opening sequence where he comes in and he's singing and he like takes off his jacket, takes off his tie, and then like zips up the other jacket and he just swaps his shoes, but he's still in like slacks and a dress shirt, and half the time he doesn't even take off his tie?
Yeah.
That used to piss me off so much as a kid, where it's like, he's not even changing into anything comfortable. Like, why is this happening? Right. But what he's doing is actually changing so that you get this mental shift of, I was in work mode and now I have crossed the threshold into another mode, into another mindset. You don't get the luxury of doing that with a wind up or a wind down with a commute. You don't even get to be in a different building. And so you get caught in this kind of like eternal purgatory of always on the clock, always off the clock. Everything just kind of gets nebulous and blends in together, right? And so one of the things that you could do, and people talk about this with other things, like make sure you have an office that you're only in. That's why people will say, the bedroom is for sleeping and sex. Like, don't do anything else in there because you're in that mode when you're in there. And it's the same thing with work. Like, have a space where you go to do work and you cross the threshold. Do that with your clothes. And maybe it's something as simple as, yeah, you're working from home, but you put on shoes. And like, that's it. You're still in your sweats and your hoodie, but you put on shoes, and watch that help you get into and out of work mode when you're on and off the clock, and watch it help you get a better sense of time and control over your day and everything else that comes with it. So by all means, still change your style, even if you're working from home, but do it for you instead of rather for everybody else. Okay.
I got you.
Awesome. Okay. That was a good question. All right, Amy, where does the thought of age appropriate come in? All right, you ready to unmute? Let me ask you for more context on that. Are you finding yourself frustrated by that?
No, not at all. The opposite, actually.
You love it?
I think within this journey of evolving, I get the opportunity to express myself through my clothes. So I wake up and I'm like, what am I feeling? some days I'm like in my not don't mess with me mode. And so I got my camo leggings on. But today I feel snow bunny. So I'm like more white and
Mhm.
fuzzy boots. But sometimes I'm like, should I be like in a different area because I am a mom or I am a manager? So
Mhm.
what's age appropriate? Like where does that fall in with what you teach?
So I would say that age appropriate has more to do with all of the things that you're trying to express are still very doable, but it's just a matter of being able to gauge where you are within a spectrum. And this is where it's very different for men than it is for women. Although for you, thinking about it from the context of a mom and a manager puts it more kind of like where men are, because if we're talking purely from like a dating and relationship perspective, for men, it's advantageous to look more like we're in our 30s or our 40s and we're kind of embracing the gray and the grizzle. It's basically like you go back to biology and it's like we haven't been killed yet. We've been through enough rounds that we haven't been killed yet. Whereas for women, most of the time it's how to look as young as possible. But for you, looking too young as a mom or a manager is going to kill and undermine credibility, authority, dignity, self-respect, and stuff like that. And so it's a matter of being able to find the right balance. And so what I would say is probably the best approach for you is not getting caught. This is silly, but I was thinking about this today. I was at my son's jujitsu practice, and it's like me and a bunch of moms that are in there. And one of the moms was still wearing stuff that was very popular like 10 years ago, like hyper skinny jeans and like super low rise and stuff like that. And so what she was wearing was no longer age appropriate because what it was signaling was she had held on to the youth of the early 2000s or like the early 2010. But at the same time, she can't dress in a way that high school girls are now today. And you certainly can't because you're not. And again, that's going to undermine credibility and authority as a mom and a manager and everything else like that. And so this is where starting to move towards things that are a little bit more timeless, a little bit more elegant, a little bit more sophisticated or things like that. That's what's going to, because the aesthetics, the beauty, the concern for all of that absolutely still matters. But then the focus on the effortlessness, the timelessness and everything else, this is where we can get all of those good things without having to sacrifice all those other good things that come with it. And so that doesn't mean you have to dress like Princess Diana or anything like that, but like you can start to embrace a little bit more of that kind of like timeless elegance while still getting in the I'm wearing dark colors because I'm pissed and I don't want anybody to deal with me, or I'm wearing lighter colors because I want to be more open and engaging and friendly and stuff like that. So you're like 90% of the way there. Does that help?
Yeah, I did. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. All right, let's keep going. Okay, Rick, have you found people getting stuck in finding their authenticity, a fight between attachment and where they fit in being true to themselves? Dude, yes. I would say, and this is why, okay, I will tell you guys, most people who do what I do, they will take you shopping like within a day of meeting you, or they will take you shopping within like, they'll have you fill out a quick questionnaire and then they will send you a buying list. I work with my clients anywhere from an average of like 2 to 4 months. And we don't do a single round of shopping until we're at least 2 months into the program. And that's because we have to spend all of that time figuring out what their identity really is. Because if I just start with clothing right away, then it creates dissonance that happens in there. And so, Rick, what I found is that the best way to be able to help them with this is to actually go through their closets with them and ask them, why do you wear what you wear? Did you buy that? Did somebody buy that for you? How do you feel about that? Why is that still in your closet if you don't wear it? Why couldn't you bring yourself to get rid of it? And because all of you guys naturally already express yourself through your clothing. If you didn't, you wouldn't be wearing what you're wearing. You would hate it. It would feel like nails on a chalkboard every time you put it on. You're naturally expressing yourself through your clothing. And so my job is to take it from being subconscious and almost thoughtless into being very intentional and deliberate, and then expanding on it and working with it from there. So that's the trick to that. Okay. Ryan, how do you find your new style after growth? I'm basically worn the same clothes for 20 plus years. All right, Ryan, let's talk, dude. Let's have you unmute for me.
Yes.
Okay, so tell me what you're wearing.
Well, now it's like, like the bootcut jean, and just any kind of graphic tee.
Okay.
Like that's just basically it. I'm a military guy, so it's mostly like, grunt style, 9-line, that kind of stuff. Like
Okay.
anything that has to do with that. I mean,
Cool.
Even before in high school, it was like an athletic tee or, baseball, whatever, something like that. It was, but the jeans and t-shirt, basically, that's it. Shorts, like you said, once every 3 years, I might have a pair of shorts on, you know what I mean?
Gotcha. Okay. No, that makes perfect sense. Okay. So there's basically two different approaches that you can take. The first one, shill, is to work with me, read my book, something else like that, where I can actually like teach you the process to be able to think through stuff the right way. The other one is you can dress in a way that's a little bit more just kind of neutral. All right. And you can come up with kind of a personal uniform. But again, this is where it has to evolve every once in a while. So like boot cut jeans, as soon as you hear that, where my head goes and where most people go is that guy got trapped in the late 90s, early 2000s, just like you said. Like that was when his identity solidified, and it is now this calcified thing that is going to stick with him for the rest of forever, right? And so rather than sticking with boot cut jeans, we don't have to go to suits, we don't have to go to slacks, we don't have to change the formality. We still wear jeans, but just go with something that's not skinny, but not boot cut, not baggy, just like a slim, dark jean, okay? And then same thing when it comes to your t-shirts, still wear t-shirts. Rick, every time I've seen Rick on a call or watched his videos, he looks great in his t-shirts. But notice that Rick is almost always in logoless t-shirts, and they're the ones that fit him really well, right? Like they're nice and snug on the chest, the traps, the shoulders, and the arms, a good amount of drape down through the waist and the seat. And so the graphic is not what people are paying attention to. Rick's identity isn't rooted in his consumption of or affiliation with a particular product or a particular brand. Rick is the thing that we are paying attention to. And so solid t-shirts, simple, easy upgrade from a graphic, especially because, dude, Ryan, what it really comes down to is you're not a side character in somebody else's story. You're the main character. And so rather than being seen as a billboard for somebody else's product, and Rick, I hope I'm not like tanking all of your Warrior Way sales, but rather than being a billboard for somebody else's products, let your clothing be a way to showcase who you are and let yourself be what people focus on and pay attention to. And so that's really the easiest upgrade to make, is just like update the fit so it's something that's contemporary without being trendy, and make it so that you're the focus instead of the clothing itself. Does that help?
Yes. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome, sir. Okay. Daniel, do you mind if I ask you, are you saying like this whole concept you're not sure if it's for you, or just one of the topics we were talking about?
I can't type because I'm actually driving at the same time. So,
Oh, no worries.
but you just told me bootcut jeans says I was trapped in the late 90s, early 2000s. I don't think I've ever owned anything other than a pair of bootcut jeans.
Nice.
As far as getting out of my semi wearing tighter jeans, I don't want to give that message to other people at the pickle park.
What message?
I'm a part of a lifestyle I'm not really a part of.
What's that lifestyle?
Swinging in a men's only club.
Okay, I get where you're going. Okay, my follow-up question for you is that still actually what's being communicated with anything other than baggy or bootcut jeans? Do you only see effeminate dudes or gay dudes wearing anything? And I'm not saying skinny, don't wear skinny, but just slim jeans. If you think about everything around you, are you only seeing effeminate dudes in slim jeans and everybody else is in baggy or bootcut?
In my industry, I don't really, if they're wearing sweatsuits, I know they're not serious about their industry.
Okay.
I have human interactions probably 10 minutes a day. I'm a truck driver.
Okay, gotcha.
So that's why when I heard, don't set your office up in your bedroom. Well, my bedroom's in my office.
Right.
Because I carry it around with me. Every T-shirt I own, I think I bought because I was trying to win something.
Okay.
And bootcut jeans because the most versatile shoe I found is a Western work boot.
Okay.
Square toe, nice tread on the bottom. That way I can actually wear these shoes, and they're easy to take off while I'm going down the road.
Yeah. Okay. So from a function perspective, a lot of that makes sense. And so then the follow-up questions that I would ask are, one, are there other options that can be just as functional, like a pair of slim Wranglers that you can still wear that fit over boots just fine? Or if that's not the case. And so this is where this idea of attachment really becomes crucial. And again, this is kind of talking about what we were saying, where like a guy who runs a roofing business in Wisconsin is different than an attorney in Vegas, which is different than my guy who runs a tech company in Italy. Like they can't wear the same stuff. And so legitimately, dude, if you're wearing anything but bootcut jeans sends the wrong signals about your sexuality and your tribe, then stick to bootcut jeans, because you don't want to send the wrong signals. Your aesthetic window that you're operating within is a little bit narrower than most people's. And it doesn't matter if that window is, from a general perspective outside of your tribe, a window that's stuck in the late 90s or early 2000s, because you live within that tribe and you have to, and you, I mean, you don't have to, but you want to operate within that window. And so this is where I would stop relying so much on autopilot, stop relying so much on what I'm honestly hearing is a little bit of like reticence or even some fear of, if I do this wrong, then I'm going to draw unwanted attention and it's going to create negative consequences. And so don't even think about it for yourself as far as what you're going to change, but just pay more attention to the other people that you actually consider your tribe. And then the question is it fellow truckers that are your tribe? Is it the people that you're doing deliveries for, the people that you're doing deliveries to? Is it all of it? Where are your tribes in that regard? And if it's not this group, then why are you letting them be the ones that dictate what it is that you're wearing? And so I would say your solution right now is to ask a whole lot more questions than you are before you can actually start finding the right answers. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I think generally in a whole, my wardrobe is established of functionality. There are the occasions in which, if we go out to dinner, me and the missus go out to dinner or something, yeah, I'm going to change it up. I'm not wearing, no, that's not true. Most of the time, I'm not going to wear jeans and a t-shirt. I'll change it up. I'll put on jeans and a button-up shirt of some sort. Really special occasions like anniversaries, I'll go get the slacks out. But as a whole,
so it sounds like the conflation that I'm hearing here from you is that I have functional clothing or I have formal fancy clothing, and those are my options. And this is what a lot of blue collar guys kind of get trapped in, is the idea that clothing can either be functional or it can look good, but there's not an option of things both looking good and functioning, to the point where in a lot of blue collar spaces, the anti-aesthetic has become the aesthetic. If your clothing does look like it's anything but purely functional, you have now sinned against the aesthetic of your tribe, and there are consequences for that. And so this is again where I would ask you the question of, okay, we know where the window is, and it's tight. It is function only. And anything that communicates form outside of these very specific formal environments is a problem. And so then the question is, do you want to conform to that? And if so, awesome, keep wearing what you're wearing. If you don't want to conform to that, then find ways to get to the edges of that window by maybe wearing clothing that is both functional and good looking, changing the fit, dialing in things a little bit, not just wearing t-shirts that you got from trying to win things or stuff like that, but not going totally outside. Like it's, dude, you're not going to wear a 3-piece suit when you're driving a truck. That's a stupid idea. That's way too far outside the window. And so again, the question is, now we know how narrow the window is, where do you want to fit within it? And that's not really a rhetorical question. If you need some time to think about it, take some time to think about it. But if you know where you want to fit, tell me where you want to fit. Do you want to be right in the middle, or do you want to push out and be more than just that window?
I honestly, I don't think I dress to fit the part of being a truck driver.
Of course you do. You just told me that. You totally fit the stereotype of the truck driver.
I believe the clothing is what I need to be able to do my job at the level of which I do it.
Right. And that's why the function over everything else is very much that trucker or other blue collar association. Because if I told you that you could dress in a way that is entirely functional and looks good, do you embrace that idea or do you reject that idea?
I would embrace it, but then my question would be, who am
Okay.
I looking good to?
Then this is where we were talking the same thing with Chris. Look good to yourself. Are you somebody who's worth looking good? Are you somebody who likes to see somebody who is aspirational and noble and dignified? Do you like seeing that in the mirror, or would you rather see somebody who just is the only value is function?
I'm not trying to be combative here.
No, neither am I. I just love that you're being honest with me, man. I really appreciate it.
Because honestly, if I got out of this truck and I walked in, even if you didn't see me get out of this truck and I could walk into your office, let's say
Mhm.
you're trying to ship something,
Yeah.
and I walk into your office and I'm wearing a pink bunny outfit,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to give me a queer look. Sure.
Absolutely. Right.
But
So
after
we know
5 minutes
that's
of
way
talking-
outside the window.
But after 5 minutes of talking with me, it's not going to matter what I'm wearing. You're going to know I'm going to get the job done.
Okay. So then just get rid of your clothes and wear your wife's dresses to work. If all you need is 5 minutes with people, then why not just wear her clothes? It's more economical that way. It's clearly more functional.
Well, what you wear when I'm gone for 2 weeks?
I understand the resistance to this. And what I'm challenging you to do is think about the fact that on some level, you understand that your clothing is part of your communication. It's your communication with the rest of the world and it's your communication with yourself. And I may not give you those 5 minutes if you show up in a pink gorilla suit. I may not. I may be totally over the pink gorilla suit if I got those 5 minutes, but I may not give them to you at all. And you may not be as confident to walk up to me and know that I'm going to give you those 5 minutes if you do show up in the pink gorilla suit. And so ironically, there is function in form. It's social and self-perceptive function as opposed to just physical function in the form.
And the craziest part about all this, I don't know if Vanessa's on this call. If she is, maybe she can chime in. I am one of the pickiest people about my clothes ever.
That's like I said. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
4 months shopping for underwear before I finally found some that I would wear.
Yes.
And the most
Yeah.
expensive ones.
Yes. Oh, dude, you're proving my point, right? You care so much. You care so much that you were so resistant to this idea because it's a resistance to the change in your identity. And you will spend 4 months finding the perfect pair of underwear because it matters that much to you. And so I'm not trying to change that. I just want you to expand on that so that it's not just limited to one expression of it, but you get to capitalize on all these other benefits that come with it too.
But the price of the underwear did not play into my decision. I was actually reluctant to purchase them because they were expensive.
Right.
And I didn't actually like them until I wore the first pair for 2 days straight, and they did everything I asked that underwear should do over the course of 2 days.
Yep.
So at
So-
that point, it's like, I don't care how much they cost. That's what I want to wear.
Yes, yes, right. And that's a good position to be in, especially if you can afford to make the decision that way. And so again, what I would challenge you to do is not think of function and form as mutually exclusive, but think of physical function, which you're already totally dialed in at being able to gauge and value the physical function of clothing. That's why you hunted for and put in all this energy and effort and paid all this money to find underwear that was physically functional. And just as important is the social and self-perceptive function that comes with the form. That it doesn't have to come at the exclusion of physical function. We get to have our cake and eat it too. So don't abandon this, but expand into this other stuff as well. Okay.
All right.
Awesome. Dude, thank you for the pushback. That was a really good conversation to have. So thank you. All right, let's move on. Okay, Perry. Perry, where are you? Can you unmute for me? Perry still on?
Yep. What's up, man?
Awesome. Okay, dude. So 350, 360, and you're just kind of trapped in gym clothes and everything else like that is where you are, right?
Yeah.
Why do you feel comfortable in that?
It's the only thing that really feel fits.
Okay.
Everything, like, I don't know. I have this weird thing. It's kind of funny that people who know me in this group will laugh. I have this thing about people staring at me.
Mhm.
And I feel like if I'm wearing anything other than, jeans and a t-shirt or something like that, or gym shorts or something like that, people are always just looking at me.
Gotcha.
I'm a big dude. I feel like people are staring at me everywhere I go.
Yeah, and the reality of it is dude, at 360, a big dude, like people are staring at you wherever you go, and you're not going to be able to hide that with any clothing. The problem that you're going to come up with, and this is for guys, for big guys altogether, is, and I'm just going to be blunt with you. When people see a guy your size, there are automatically associations of lack of discipline, sloppiness, anything else. And that's why you got to that size. That's the story that plays out for anybody. That's what you're self-conscious about, right?
Kinda. Yeah. Well, I mean, like, I'm an active guy. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
I'm not sloppy. I'm not like a sloppy fat guy. Just like when I walk through a door and I got to turn sideways.
Gotcha.
You know?
Okay. So if we wear clothing that is super, super casual and just kind of like drapes and does whatever, then it either reinforces that for guys that are sloppy, or for guys like you who are built but big, then it removes the strength and the power and just turns you into a guy that's sloppy, right?
Yeah.
And so what we need is clothing that can still be physically comfortable. And again, it doesn't have to be formal. You can still do this stuff. And I would say like joggers and t-shirts or things like that. And so let's still find things that have good stretch to them and stuff like that. But let's just up the level of the fit, the attention to detail, the quality of the materials, that kind of stuff. So it looks like you're wearing what you're wearing because you're owning your size, as opposed to because you're self-conscious about your size.
Wear my size kind of thing. Like,
Yeah,
actually,
totally. Yeah.
fair enough.
But lean into it rather than trying to hide it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Okay.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, you're welcome, man. Okay. Let's see. Is it important to change styles? Okay, I'm gonna skip you, Chris, because we already did one and we've got a lot. All right, Tio, same thing here. Well, I may come back to these. Let's see what the rest of this conversation is. Yes, okay. Big Heart Bow, fresh, clean tees. That is awesome, you guys, as far as like really trying to find good sizing, because they did like the ideal fit, like I was talking about with Rick, where tighten the chest and the shoulders and the sleeves and then good drape throughout. Like they're awesome. Same thing with True Classic tees. They're another good option there. Okay. Let's see. Perry, I saw this other comment. So dude, you're just freaking massive and strong and jacked, and we just have to actually own that instead of looking like you're self-conscious about it. That's perfect. Yeah. Okay. All right. Chris, is it important to change styles from time to time? For instance, is there a benefit to going from jeans and a hoodie most days to occasionally throwing on something more upscale? Absolutely. Right. How stupid would it be to go surfing in a suit? Right? Or to show up to jury duty in your pajamas. This kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, Chris, as far as like one of the things that your clothing can do is it can make you more present and engaged in whatever it is that you're doing. I would actually make the argument, Perry, let me have you unmute for me. Is your mindset a little bit different if you were in like a singlet, like if you're in your powerlifting gear than you are if you're just in your regular gym clothes?
Way different.
Right?
About as tight as it gets, homie.
Isn't that crazy? Like you're in go mode when you're doing the same thing, but you're wearing different clothing because it's a trigger for your brain to up the mindset a little bit more, right? And so the argument that I would make is if you want to really enjoy, like let's say you're going to the symphony or to the opera. If you really want to enjoy that full experience, dress up for it. Just like if you really want to enjoy going to the gym, you don't go in jeans, you go in workout clothes, right? And so, Chris, the more that you can understand that clothing either diminishes or enhances your experience of things, and you want it to help enhance your experience of things, then the more you will find that it's actually kind of fun to change what you're wearing depending on what you're doing. I mean, if you go on a date and you go to a pub, don't get dressed up. But if you go to a date and you go to a really upscale, nice restaurant, then absolutely get dressed up, because it will increase your ability to be present in whatever it is you're doing so much more than if you just kind of dress in this mediocre, trying to encompass all variables type of way. It will be infinitely better for you, and your dates will be more fun. So
now, would you say that that extends beyond clothing as well? So like potentially like a different hairstyle or something like that as well? Because, I've essentially had the same style for about the past 10, 15 years, typically jeans, t-shirt, hoodie, about the same haircut. I can't remember the last time my face was clean shaven. This is basically what it's been like for the past decade,
Yeah, it depends. I mean, obviously you're not really going to be changing your hairstyle on a weekly basis because you've got this thing going on versus that thing going on. And a lot of it depends on guys who have certain hairstyles or certain like facial hairstyles. If it looks like when I see dudes that wear goatees that or like imagine a dude with like big 70s like sideburns, like big chops, it's like that doesn't really work. But where your grooming and everything is still current enough that it doesn't become a problem for you. But no, it's definitely more than clothing. Like I've even been experimenting lately with wearing different colognes depending on who I'm with or what I'm doing or what kind of mood I'm feeling, as a way to see if I can use that to further enhance my mindset or my ability to be present in whatever it is that I'm doing. So yeah, it's way more than clothing. Yeah, definitely. Okay, Rick, let's go to this one. Have you seen anyone you work with when they unveil their new look and authenticity gets judged or shamed and abandon their training for attachments? I did when I first started working with guys. This is why I was able to figure out that this didn't work, because when I first started doing this stuff, I was a stylist. It was just like, okay, I'll take you shopping. Let's swap out the t-shirts for button ups. Let's get rid of the jeans for some chinos. We'll get a cool sports coat. And without fail, every time 6 months later, I'd check in and they were back to wearing the same stuff that they did. Now it doesn't happen. In fact, if you guys follow me on social media, you'll find that I don't very often post a bunch of before and after photos, because I learned the hard way that a lot of times people who didn't understand the process would look at those and go, I don't see a huge difference here, because we expect like fitness transformation photos where it's like, I was at 40% body fat. Now I'm at 11% body fat. And it's this big change. But with clothing, again, 10% of it is aesthetics. The other 90% has to do with attachment and authenticity. It's all about self-perception. And so if we can just fine tune and take what you're doing and do it better, to the point where most people can't even put their finger on it. They're just like, I don't know why, you just look better. You just look more confident. That's actually the goal that I'm after. And so no, I haven't in a long time had a client that was that like we went through and did everything, and then they were just like, nah, this doesn't work for me anymore. Yeah.
Have you run into whenever somebody is like, they've got like the look and they have like, they've gone through the training and then they're with people who keep judging them, like, that's not you, who are you trying to be, you're being fake, and then they end up like abandoning it? Is your focus more on like the hardcore mindset training of it and then adding in the matched look, or is it more like we got to try and work on the look and then make it so you believe the new you?
It's more the former than the latter, but I've also found that this is a really good filtration system for the people you don't want in your life. Because if people see a slight change in your aesthetics and they get pissed off at you about it, it's a transactional relationship. And so it's a really good way. Sometimes I do have clients that deal with that a little bit. And a lot of times it's not even necessarily about the clothing, but it's about like, I can't believe you're spending money on this, or it's vain to even think about this at all. And so it's not even necessarily like the clothing itself, just the fact that it's become an area of focus that guys get some resistance on.
How many divorces come from that sentence?
Thankfully, none yet. None yet.
Like, you're spending money on what? That's, you're wasting your time. Who are you trying to impress? You know,
Yeah.
it's
Nope. Thankfully, none of that yet. But
like, listen, woman, you're a transactional dynamic in my life. And
you're toxic. I don't want anything to do with you anymore.
I need to get rid of people like you.
Tanner said you have to choose between me. I have to choose between you or him, and I'm going with him. So yeah, no, thankfully not much of that yet. So, okay, let's go to Christy. All right. So as a woman, I find it hard to dress nicer when I'm usually in a hoodie and leggings. I'm told I look nice. I'm trying hard. Okay. So talk through this with me for a little bit. Tell me what the frustration is here.
I think you guys basically just answered what I was trying to get at. Like anytime you try to like change your aesthetic or seem like, you know, dress a little bit nicer, when you usually don't, people are like, oh my God, like, what are you doing? That's not you, you know, same thing, like, you know, are you wearing heels? You know, well, because I feel like it today.
Yeah. Well, and I'm a little bit jealous because you women, you have a lot more, your windows are always bigger than ours are as men. You have a lot more latitude to be able to play with things. And there's a lot more expectation for you to have different looks or to be able to play with things like that. And so I think the thing that I would focus on for yourself, but even as a good way to communicate with other people, is I felt like doing this, or I wanted to be more present in what I was doing, or this event calls for this. Why are you not dressing that way? And obviously, like, you don't have to say with that level of disdain, but like put the burden of proof back on them as far as like, why would you not do this? My life is so much fuller because I have this whole other venue to express myself, to immerse myself in experiences. Like, there's all this cool stuff that I get to do that you don't, because you're trapped in the same like hoodie and sweats compared to everybody else, you know? So I'd reframe it that way. Okay. Yeah, you're welcome. Oh, Clint, this is an interesting one. How does ADHD play into how you dress and feel during the day? Do you want to elaborate on that question for me a little bit? Do we still have Clint in? Clint, can you unmute? Are you here? Can I talk to you?
Hey, sorry about that. You got me?
You're good. Yes, gotcha. Okay, so tell me what the struggle is for you here.
I'm just curious, like the I just kind of notice weird things with that. So like for me, so I do a lot of work from home.
Mhm.
I have for the last 3 years. So for me, like it's kind of a routine thing, but like if I don't put on shoes in the morning, or I'm like walking around in flip flops or whatever, because I don't have to like go to office, I'm like way less productive.
Mhm.
So I'm just curious, like, have you done any like analysis of, hey, you actually get up and get dressed and, you know, that kind of thing?
I've seen other people talk about this quite a bit, where especially with ADD, where it's like if you can just put on shoes, then all of a sudden everything starts to change and you get out of procrastination mode into go mode or into like doing stuff, right? And so
Right.
I would say the best thing for you to do is, one, ride that wave, and two, just be willing to experiment more and see if there's anything else that you can capitalize on that does that, because there are kind of like general principles when it comes to ADD, and then there are others that are just going to be very specific to you. And so for you, it may be that it's like, I have an incredibly streamlined wardrobe where it's like, it's all black shirts and olive green pants, and some of them are jeans or chinos or t-shirts or Henleys or whatever else, but I know that everything is going to work color wise and fit wise and formality wise, and that helps you be able to like eliminate decision fatigue and then free up your mental energy to focus on other things. Or maybe it's that I actually need a ton of variety because I can feel based on the mood that I'm in or the mode that I'm in, that if I do this, if I wear this one specific thing, then that's actually going to help me capitalize on that and boost that up even more. And so that's where I would say experimentation is going to be your best friend. Like, be a self-scientist and see what you can come up with on your own.
Gotcha. Cool. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right. Amy, you want to talk about how this goes in the dating world?
Well, I want you to talk about how this goes.
What would you like to know?
I'm just curious. I mean, obviously, when you go out on a first date, you're wanting to have a good presentation of yourself, but you want to stay authentic too. So I was just curious. I mean, we've talked about like kind of the work world and just your social circles, but what do you have to say in the realm of dating?
Okay, that's a really good question. I would say that for both men and women, do not dress to try to impress your date. Dress in a way that is appropriate for whatever it is that you're going to do, and then dress in a way that is going to make you feel like you are at your most confident and also at your most present in whatever it is that you're doing. And if you're used to dressing like this, then what happens is, one, and again, like the aesthetics will be there, the aesthetics need to be there. But if you dress like this normally, then how that comes across to somebody on a first date with you is like, freak, she dresses this way or he dresses this way, but it feels like she dresses this way like normally. She's not putting on something fake for me, but this is just kind of like naturally who she is. And that's super attractive. And that's super attractive for both men and women, is this ability to have this level of self-awareness, self-understanding, leveraging your clothing to help you be more present and everything else. That is incredibly attractive to both sexes. And that's actually going to get you more dates and better dates. And then you'll just enjoy the dates more unto themselves because you're there to enjoy the date, not necessarily to impress the person that you're with. So make it more about you and the experience than necessarily about the person that you're going out with. Try it. Let me know. Okay. Okay. All right. What else can I answer for you guys? I don't think there is anything else unless, okay, so let's do this. Anybody who has any last questions, get them in. But other than that, I can, we can call it, and I can just say, thank you guys for hanging out with me. Wait, okay, Perry, you are getting some pushback. Do you want, okay, Perry, let's talk through this.
I wasn't saying that I was getting pushback. I was just saying, like, if people are giving you pushback, you know, it sounds like it's just those kind of people that are like they're used to you being at a certain level and then being at another level. Then when you try to start leveling up, it's almost like you're threatening their level. And it's like, how dare you try to be on my level? And they try to push you back down by giving you pushback.
Yep.
But that's not you. That's not your style. You know, your style's this, your style's that, and my style's up here, your style's down there. Don't try to be on my level. Instead, they start feeling threatened by it.
Or even the other way, you're totally right with that way. And then one of the other ways, and this is especially the case, I found this in the strength community. I'll tell you guys one of the stories. I won't tell you who it is because Perry, you probably know him. I was working at his gym out in Sacramento, and he was telling me about one of his best friends who was getting married in Italy. this like awesome destination wedding and everything else. And he wasn't going to go because he couldn't wear gym shorts to the wedding. And that was like the only thing he ever actually felt comfortable wearing. And so he was going to hate the entire experience because he couldn't wear his gym shorts. And a lot of times guys who feel that way will resent you for trying to not get up to their level, but for escaping what their level is. And so they'll try to pull you back down. And so it's either like, you know, above pushing down, or a lot of times it's below trying to pull you back into where they are. But either way, it's that good gauge of like, people resent you for trying to improve some aspect of your life. And a lot of times what you guys will find is that people love self-development, but they only love self-development in the arenas that they're trying to get better at. And they'll still kind of resent you if you start to expand outside arenas that they're not comfortable with. And the people that are really worth investing in and paying attention to are the ones that will support you as you go into those other arenas, even if that's not necessarily one that they're comfortable with or they're ever going to pursue at all.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, Rick, thanks for letting me come hang out. You guys are an awesome group. And I loved the pushback. I loved the corrections. I love being able to talk through this stuff with you guys. So I know that, I mean, that's an hour and 20 minutes. That's your valuable time. So thank you guys for taking the time to hang out with me.
Thank you, Tanner. I appreciate you for showing up too. And hopefully you guys got something out of this. This was very cool. I've got a few pages of notes here and some things also to think about how we can associate this. I know there's other things that you had too, where I did enjoy often seeing how you associated style with warriors and being loud because you are warriors, and everybody here has gone through battles or will be going through battles with us. And so I've seen some of these people who you wouldn't think are badasses, where you know, there is a degree of status and things like that too to put you into go mode. So
can I expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I would love it.
One of the things that's always the funnest thing to get pushback on, especially with guys who resist this idea, or real men don't care how they look, or even kind of Clint, I think it was where you were, where there's this real resistance to anything other than the function, is if you go back through history and you look at any culture in any time, the men who cared the most about their aesthetics, not just the function of their clothing, but the aesthetics and what was communicated through their clothing, it was the warrior classes. You had to earn the right to wear the clothing that they wore. And if you didn't, it was stolen valor, you know, and this is something that we still get today. And so clothing is very much a symbol of belonging to a certain caste or a certain class. It is a symbol of accomplishments. And the men who have always been the most invested in that were the warriors. And so if you need that to give yourself a little bit of permission to invest in this, embody that aspect of being a warrior and being part of this group too, because your aesthetic can help you embody that just as much as all the other stuff that Rick has you guys doing.
Yeah, I like it. Permission granted to dress the way that you have evolved into and not have to be who you were.
Yep.
I like it. That's pretty awesome, Tanner. I really do appreciate you, man, and I'm looking forward to doing stuff in the future. Just another plug for Tanner. I do have you scheduled for going live with us Friday in front of our audience. This is my warriors. These are the people that we've gone into battle with.
Yep.
But on Friday, we're going to go live on TikTok, and Tanner will be live with us there, and we'll be doing more Q&A, live stuff together, and showcasing more stuff from Tanner and stuff from us. So it's going to be a pretty cool combining coaches and just helping more people. So we'll be live Friday night. I have that at 7 p.m. Eastern, which is I have it at 8 p.m. Eastern. That's 6 o'clock your time, right?
Sweet. Yep.
Yeah, so I have it set for 8 o'clock on Friday. So I'd like you guys, warriors, jump in then, ask more questions or have more thoughts, or even just have some fun smashing like buttons and sharing stuff and getting more people involved in both working with Tanner and in the warriors way. And if people do want to go like, you know what, Tanner, I want to do the thing with you. Do you only work locally or do you travel? How does that work?
Most of it's actually done online. I do have clients that will fly out to me fairly frequently if you want to actually do the shopping with me, but most of the time we don't need to. Mm-hmm. And so if you guys are interested in doing something with me, you can just shoot me an email. It's tanner@masculine-style.com, or you can go check out masculine-style.com, go see the site and kind of like get on the mailing list and all of that. And also for you guys who are active on social media, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all of it, it's at Tanner Guzy. And what you'll find, I think this is why Rick and I get along so well, is like 10% of the stuff that I put out is actually style stuff. I'm way more interested in all aspects of self-development, especially masculinity, family, intentional and aspirational fatherhood and all that stuff. And clothing is just a supplement to that, as opposed to being the end goal unto itself.
Awesome, brother. Appreciate you so much. Warriors, we're done a little bit earlier than normal than tonight, so enjoy the rest of your nights, get some rest, and I'll see some of you tomorrow, and I'll see some of you the rest of the week. So thank you again, Tanner, and we'll be in touch, brother.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Warriors. I'll see you guys later.